I get emotional talking about it because it was so hard. And I had to find motivation from everywhere I could, but I didn't quit in that time. And because of that, I've been able to do some really beautiful things with my life, and it means a lot to me. So, show up today for your future self. That's what I tell people.
All right, Jimmy. So I know you wrote a book. You interviewed a bunch of people on real estate. You made them into little small nuggets, small chunks for everybody to learn. Tell me about your book. What is it called? First of all, how can we get a hold of it?
Yeah, it's called The Next Wave of Influence in Real Estate. And what happened is, so when I was young in the real estate industry, I've been in here for 15 years now. And when I first started out, I got mentored by 3 of the 4 top real estate coaching mentors for agents in the entire country. And one of them, a guy named Mike Ferry, he used to put together these masterminds every single quarter. We would go somewhere different across the country, either Miami or San Francisco or Chicago. And he would bring us all together, all agents that were selling 75 or more homes a year. And back then there was no team. So this was truly the rock stars of the industry. And thankfully I'd sold enough homes to qualify. So I got to go to these events. And every single event, I was learning so much from these top agents because they were out of their normal market, they were willing to share what they were doing. And it really catapulted my career. And so he did that for a little while. And then when the market turned, we kind of stopped doing it. But it really was the impetus for me getting to where I was in real estate. And so I started thinking a couple of years ago, I'm like, man, I would really like to replicate that. That was such a huge benefit to all of us that went. But I started looking at the cost to get all these agents together and to do this, to rent spaces, and just the logistics of it were pretty tough. And so I said, what if I just did it in a book form? And Tim Ferriss had just come out with his book, Tools of Titans. And I noticed how, in his books, he was interviewing people and then he was putting information into books. And so I said, what if I just did that with real estate agents? So I did a lot of research, found 100 of the top millennial real estate agents across the country. And I just went to work doing interviews. And so I picked 7 questions that I thought would be very helpful. What's your morning routine, your daily routine? What's your, big golden nugget? What do you do when you get down? What are some of your marketing secrets? How did you come across your first deal and really get started in the industry? So I took all the interviews and I put that information into the book. And that is now what is the Next Wave of Influence in Real Estate book. And so it's been pretty fun to watch. I get a ton of people, we've sold over 6,000 books since last September, mostly to real estate agents. That's kind of the book is geared towards them. But I have had a lot of non-agents buy it as well and tell me, hey, I'm getting as much out of this for my industry as I would if I was an agent. So thanks for putting it together. But that's really how the book came about.
I love it. So it's a compilation of all the top people and what they do and how they learn real estate. How did you first get into real estate? And one thing that I learned right now from you is that at very young in your career, you starting getting mentors or you're around the right people, and how important is that to your success?
Yeah, so when I was in 2005 is when I got in. So I've been in for 15 years now. And it's funny because I got my associate's degree at a local university. And I just didn't want to go to the 4-year school there. I wanted to go to a different school. So I went 4 days before they started. It was a major D1 university, a top 40 school. And I just went in like, hey, I want to take classes. And they're, okay, well, did you sign up? Did you apply? And I was like, that's what I'm doing, And they're like, dude, the deadline was like 4 months ago. So I ended up with 6 months with nothing. That's how naive I was. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I had these 4-month period. I was like, well, what am I going to do now? And, my dad had done some real estate. I'd always been intrigued by real estate. I'd read a couple books. I had a buddy that sold audio CDs for a company, and he'd sold Robert Kiyosaki and Carlton Sheets, some of these old school guys, and he'd given me a couple. So I was very intrigued with real estate. And so I decided, I'm going to go get my license. I got time here. And so I got my license, and this was in the beginning of 2005. And so I actually got my license April 2005, literally 15 years ago, almost to the day. And when I got going, there was this crazy boom that was happening at that time. It was just starting, everybody I talked to was, look.
I bought my house there at that time. I lost my ass. Tell me about it.
Well, yeah, 2005, 6, it was like the best thing ever. And then all of a sudden, trust me, I thought I was God's gift to real estate. My first 6 months, so my first 6 months, I sold like 3 houses. I didn't know what I was doing. I was terrible. And then all of a sudden, I found a flyer in my desk. I don't know how I got there, but I went to this seminar with the top real estate coach in the country. And he started teaching at this seminar, his guys were teaching us how to call for sale by owners, how to do a listing, all these things that I always wanted to know. And I just dove. It was a 3-day seminar. It's funny because to my name, I had like $2,000. I was dead broke. And I remember day 1 of the seminar, they gave us a homework, and I went home and did it. And I got like 3 leads, good leads that were going to buy or sell a house. And so I went back the second day, and again, I got like my hat backwards. I got tattered jeans up. I just, I'm a little punk kid. And the second day, he gives us a homework, and again, I get a couple of leads. I'm like, man, this is gold. And so the third day I go back, and that's when they give you the pitch for the coaching program, right? And it's 12 months commitment, $1,000 a month. And I'm sitting there with, to my name, I have like no money at all.
Is this Tom Ferry?
It was Mike Ferry, his dad. Yeah. So that time it was Mike Ferry. And so I go up to the guy who was, doing the seminar, who's actually helps Tom run his stuff now, is a guy by the name of Bill Pipes. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm in on this. I want to do this, but I don't have any money on my credit card. So if you guys charge me right now, I'm not going to be able to, it's not going to go through. So I said to him, if you'll just wait 4 or 5 weeks, I got a deal closing. And if you'll wait those 4 or 5 weeks, I'm all in. So he goes, all right, I'll make a note. We'll call you on Monday to find out what date we can actually run this. So with no money, I freaking sign up for this coaching program with Mike Ferry. And between that point and the next 6 months, and I dove all in, by the way, like I knew, I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go 100%. And I'd talked to people at that seminar that had their little coaching badge on. And I asked them, I was like, does this work? They're like, oh yeah, it works. I was like, well, how many homes are you guys selling? They were all selling 30 or 40 deals a year. I'm doing like 3, I said, well, how much of it do you do? And they all kind of laughed. They're like, well, we do like 20 or 30% of it. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. If it works, why don't you do 100%? And they were like, well, it's too hard. Like nobody does 100%. So I remember when I signed up, I'm like, I don't have the money to do this. I'm going to do 100%. And that next 6 months, by the end of the year, I'd sold 60 homes my first year. And by year 2, I was one of the 2 finalists for Salesperson of the Year on the board of realtors in Utah. I sold 98 houses with 1 assistant, and it was like off to the races. But I dove in 100%. I truly did every single thing they told us that we were supposed to be doing. And that's kind of where my career took off. And because of that early success, everybody wanted to kind of interview me. Everybody wanted me on their stage. There was no podcast back then, but there was like, I remember my academy in front of like 4,000 people doing a listing presentation for sell by owner script and all these different things. And so that's where it really took off. And then just like you said, so I had 2005, 6, and 7, but first half of 2007, I thought I was like, oh, I'm the man. I'm the best at this. I was selling so many houses. Oh, dude, I didn't even cash my check for weeks. Sometimes I'd find them in my desk, like $15,000 checks. It's just money was coming from everywhere. And all of a sudden, market turns overnight. I think it was like August 11th. I always try to pinpoint that date. But and I went from like, this is the easiest thing in the world to we couldn't find another deal. And 2008, 2009 were just brutal years. I made about a quarter or a third of what I'd made the years before. I had to lay off all my extra agents I'd brought on my team. My assistant had to put him to half time. I mean, it was brutal.
Tell me what's going through your mind. So I know exactly that day. I remember, I thought I was God's gift to real estate too, because I bought a house for, $260, my first home. Man. And like literally a few months later, it was like a $500,000, you know what I mean? Like literally like a year later, right? And I'm going like, I'm an investor, I'm the man. My business was generating money was just coming out of nowhere. And I learned that when everything is really, really good, sometimes we ignore fundamentals. Because money's going good and you're not really, paying attention to fundamentals, and I knew there was weaknesses in my business, but the money and the economy was masking that for me, and I didn't pay attention to them. But when all of a sudden the economy turned, it bit me down. Tell me your thought process at the time. What were you thinking? And did you pivot and start maybe doing short sales, and doing other things to try to, keep afloat?
Yeah, so just like you said, I mean, when it happened, we were not prepared for it because the going was going great and it happened so subtle. It wasn't like coronavirus, like real estate wise, at least everything's still kind of working. I sold 4 or 5 homes this week already. I've got people calling me, we're doing deals. It wasn't like that with the last one. I mean, it shut off overnight and you couldn't even get the kind of loans that everybody had been getting. And so I went into, thankfully I had a really good coach. I had mentors and I just dove into everything they told me. And so I spent in 2007, to give you an idea, I sold like 98 homes. The next year I made twice as many phone calls as I normally had. I doubled down on work. And the thing I did wrong is I didn't get lean quick enough. My budget was out of control. I didn't even look at my accounting until that all happened. I mean, I had made and lost $1 million before I ever did one thing of accounting, and it was so crazy because in my mind, I would have guessed I was spending $5,000 or $6,000 a month. I was spending like 22,000 a month.
Hey.
And I wanted to throw up when I saw it, dude. I just was like, where's all my money? And then the worst part too is I was young and naive. So I had all these people taking advantage of me, right? Like, I remember I invested in a Ponzi scheme. I didn't know it was my brother's like best friend, next door neighbor guy. You know, you just assume a 50-year-old dude isn't taking advantage of a 24-year-old. But
What year was that? What year was that, the Ponzi scheme?
the Ponzi scheme was 2007. It was all the same time. Yeah, 2006.
A lot of that stuff was going around at that time because people had money.
It wasn't as well known, right? And even now I see stuff all the time. Like I see Ponzi schemes all the time now. And I'm like, how are people still doing this and getting away with this? But if you haven't been through it,
you know, it's going to blow up. It's going to go public. You know, the same old scheme. Here's the research. Here's a paper published. They have the whole thing. Look, yeah, a couple of my buddies, you know, got presented with that. And we were all at a party. And I'm like, look, man, I'm not investing. I'm like, I walked away. I didn't know. I thought my buddies were going to walk away. But they invested their life savings and they lost it. You know, and
well, I'm just glad I didn't have more money back then because I would have lost whatever I had, you know. It's like the one thing I did do well is Mike, at one of Mike's big seminars that he did in, I think it was November of 2006, he told us it was coming. And he told us, he said, sell every property that's not cash flowing a couple $100. So I went from 13 homes to 11, or to 2. I sold 11 of them. Thankfully, I got rid of all those. I made money on almost all of them. But you know, I still wasn't lean on my budget. And so when the thing hit, and it kind of became okay, now I have to do this. I got down to my last 2 houses. I was upside down, probably 100 grand on each one. My rate on them was like 6 3/4 plus a second that was like 8.5. So you've got a payment for $2,600 on a $1,500 a month rent, you know? And again, I was just naive. My broker was telling me to do all this. I didn't know. I should have paid more attention, but I didn't know back then. We didn't have resources like we do today with YouTube and podcasts and all these mentors and trainers that are out there. And so anyway, so I was just scrambling, trying to figure this all out. And for the next 2 years, in 2008, I listed 179 or 187 or something like that for sell by owners, just a crazy number of houses. I think I sold like 15 or 16 of them. I mean, it was brutal. Every single Friday, I got on the phone. I had to call 40 or 50 sellers and let them know why nobody came to see their house. Because what people don't realize, like every person that's bought a home since 2010 now, they put 20% down if it was an investment, and they all have rates below 4%, most of them below 3.5%. So everything cash flows, everything's still in good shape for this next little period that's coming. But back then, nobody had a good rate. Nobody put any money down. So it was really freaking easy to walk away from a property because you didn't care. You didn't have any money into it. And you were paying out $800-900 negative cash flow every single month. So it became a war zone, right? Like I was sitting across from people every single month, every single day, basically watching them basically have a divorce over these decisions that were made on these investment properties and, you know, their own homes and things like that. So yeah, it was pretty crazy, but I learned so many things from that I was able to set up my business going forward. And I probably could have been much more aggressive from 2011 to now, but I always had this little PTSD of everything that went wrong. So every property I've bought in the last 7-8 years, I've put 25 or more % down. They cash flow really well. Like that's why, you know, right now I own 13 properties. I'm invested in a bunch of private equity companies, but I have no worries. Like every single one of those properties, I'm in really good shape. They cash flow enough that I only need like 7 of the 13 to even pay my rent, and I'm still breaking even, right? Like I'm in no danger right now, and it's pretty exciting because I learned to, you know, hold a budget that matters and things like that. So there's so many lessons that came out of that last downturn, but it was brutal. I mean, it went on for 2 years. It was really, really hard, and 90% of the people in my industry left the industry. But because of that, once I got through that, I really honed my skills and was able to develop the business that I have today.
One thing, I remember I was reading a post of yours or something about it, and you said you buy an investment property every year, and that's what you advise agents to do and everything. Can you tell me why you do that, and kind of just your philosophy behind that?
Yeah, so kind of as a minimum, you should probably be buying one a year. What I do is a little bit different than that even. So what I do is I've learned to live off of 70% of what I make, my personal and business. The 30%, I have a separate bank. My assistant literally cashes the money into that account before I ever even see it. So if I have money, I spend it, dude. I love to have a good time, and I love to invest in stuff, right? So I take that 30%, and as soon as I have enough money in that other account for another down payment, I have my minimum savings, my 6-month, safety net. And then anything over that, as soon as I get enough to buy another property, I do. And so that's how I do it. And so I actually end up buying a home quite a bit more than I bought 3 or 4 last year. Or I'll invest either in another home, or if I have like another investment that I like, some kind of, like, I bought a bunch of Bitcoin last year, different things like that. And so, that's my investment strategy. That's my investment account. And so for me, if you're a real estate person and you're a real estate agent, especially, as long as you're doing it the right way, if you're living off of 70% or 60%, 80%, whatever, pick your number that you can live off of. But if you invest the rest, you're going to keep building this portfolio account. And for me, it's all about how can I make sure I buy a property that I can always keep, that works for cash flow long term. And I like to buy properties that I can pay off in 15 years. Sometimes I'll do a 20 or 30 year loan, but I really like the 15-year loan because so much goes towards the principal that for me, it's like a forced savings account. Like, I don't save money well. So if I have a 15-year mortgage, I know every single month I'm paying down $1,200 on that mortgage, whether I make or spend money on my normal job. I can squander every other dollar I make, and I'm going to have 25, 30 properties paid off by the time I'm 50, 55. Either way, I'm done with having to work every single day.
I love that, man, because I do the same thing. I have a separate account that it automatically, on like the 5th of the month, hits my business account, goes to another account, and I don't even have the username and password. That means that
I can't pull that money out unless it's for an investment. My assistant, who's my best friend, has all the information for me.
I gotta physically go to the bank if I want to get that money, and I'm not going to the bank. I'm not going to drive over there. And there was times that I'm like, man, maybe I need to use that money. I'm like, well, I don't have access to it. So I do the same thing because when the money's there, whether you like it or not, you're going to buy a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and a little bit of this. And there's times that it's funny, my wife is like, hey, let's get this. I just tell her, we don't have any money. And she's like looking at me. She's like, what do you mean we don't have any money? I'm like, we don't have any money, And then she realizes, what I'm doing, and you got to put those parameters, in place so that you don't get in between your goals and you're not going to self-destruct. I'm so glad you like that. That's discipline.
Well, so what we do with every single person, I wish I had a me when I was younger, just being honest. Like, we sit down with every single person, we explain this to them. This is how you make wealth in your life. This is how you truly create wealth and get rich in your life. And with me when I was younger, we were just throwing money at whatever came. There was no strategy. There was no formula. There was no rhyme or reason. Cash flows didn't matter because the market was going to go up, I was told. Like, I just had bad advice. I really did. And I don't blame anybody. It was my job to figure it out, but that's what I did. So because I'm so grateful that I've been able to do that now, I love to share that with other people. My business partner is a guy by the name of Tyler, and he's the one that kind of does all the meetings with the investors, and he truly loves doing it. Like, he is lit up more than anything else, helping people buy investment properties. And so my job is, I'm the networker. I go out and I find a bunch of people and I send them to him, and he's a numbers guy. So he will sit down with every single person. We map out a 15-year pro forma for every house before they buy it. We look at every single property ourselves. We make sure that the numbers match. Like, we hold our realtors and our property managers, the other cities, super accountable. So people can literally look at this and go, look, here's what you do. Here's the money down. Here's your interest rate. Here's how much money you're going to make over 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 15, whatever. And it just maps it all out for them, and they love us. And so that's why it grew so quick, is because we've made it so simple to look at and to invest. And we're very boring investors. I like to say, if you find a real estate investor that is like super excited all the time, like he's doing a lot of cool deals, run from that guy, because you're going to lose your money eventually. We're super boring. We're just like, just keep doing it. This is the formula. Keep pumping it over and over.
It's discipline. Discipline and consistency is always boring, but it always produces results. And I always tell people, you got to have a plan and stick to it. You know what I mean? Warren Buffett is probably the most boring investor. Look at him. Most disciplined and boring.
Same thing in your industry with the fitness stuff, right? Like, there's people have these cool ideas like, this diet or this workout or this workout. It's pretty simple. It's figure out what works, the formula, and then consistently do it every single day. It's not going to take very long before you're pretty shredded. Like, it's that simple. It's that simple in every aspect of life. But people don't like that. People want to be like, I need variety. I need to mix it up. It's like, no, find a diet that works, call it a way of being, a lifestyle of how you eat, and then work out every day consistently the right way, and you're going to look really good.
I will give you an example. One of my wife's, trainers, obviously I don't train her because, I want to stay married. One of my archers, I was watching her video, and she was doing the bench press, and then she was doing leg lifts at the same time. So she was working her lower abs and bench press at the same time. I'm like, you can't be multitasking. You either do a bench press or you do leg lifts. I'm like, what are you trying to do? Like you got to concentrate on that one muscle you're working. That's going to get you injured. That's going to get you messed up. It looks cool, like, oh my God, I'm working double, but that's like multitasking muscle groups. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You see it a lot too. I think as people get bored easy, people you see it, and so people want to do something else, or people just don't have the patience. Like with real estate investing, it's a patience game. If you're doing this because you want to be rich in 5 years, that was my problem. I always had this weird goal. I wanted to be retired by 30, like I would ever just retire anyways, right? But that got me in a lot of trouble because I was super aggressive. That's how I ended up putting 50 grand in a Ponzi scheme. That's how I ended up buying into a dental clinic in Arizona that I never went and saw, that, by the way, never existed. I just gave these guys my money, And so you do these things. Well, I just saw numbers on a piece of paper. I'm like, that looks awesome. I want to own a dental clinic. I want to tell my friends I'm part owner of a dental clinic. It's just stupid. But at the end of the day, I had to learn those lessons. I had a very expensive education, I guess you could say.
So looking back, going through 2008, 2009, 2010, getting in Ponzi schemes, what would you tell that newbie real estate agent who's just getting started?
Yes, I actually wrote an article for Forbes that came out this morning that, they wanted me to write an article, and it's called Lessons for Today from the Last Housing Recession. And you can check that out or whatever. But there's 5 things that I tell them in there. I said, number 1 is get lean fast. Like, don't spend money right now. There's so many ways to get leads besides spending money. You can use social media and prospecting. Those 2 things alone, your social media and your telephone, is the only 2 things you need to get all the leads you get. Much. Quit buying leads. Don't spend your money on all these marketing ideas, because you will go broke very fast in a down economy. The second thing is focus on the key players. Like, if you're on a team, then focus on who's important on that team. If you're not, if you have a team, then you need to focus on the people on your team that are actually producing, because now isn't the time to spread everything out equally to make sure everybody's having a good time. The third thing I said is you've got to have a very detailed plan. Like, all right, how much money do I need to make every month to cover my expenses? How much do I need to make? And by the way, to still cover my 20 or 30% I put towards my investment account, how much do I need for different things? And then you've got to see, all right, then I need to make so many sales. Then to make that many sales, I need to make this many calls. And then you get it dialed in on a schedule. That's how many calls you're making every single day. That's how many posts you're making every single day, whatever you're doing to lead generate. The other thing I talk about is the importance of taking mindset breaks. When the market turned last time, one of the best things we did is we got really good at taking these little breaks every day. So I would schedule them into my calendar at least once a day for 20 minutes. I'd go out to my car. I'd leave my phone in the office, get away from that damn thing at that time. And I would sit in my car and I'd read books, listen to audios, meditate, pray, whatever I needed to do, affirmations to get my mind right. And then I'd go back in. And then if I needed another one that day, I'd take another one, because you could feel your energy drops. And we're just having so many tough conversations every single day. And then the last thing I said is just really understand that you are the person that other people can count on. Like, be that guy, because that's what I did. I just really focused in. And as hard as it was, I actually had to end up working outside of the main real estate office because so many agents were depressed in the office. I couldn't be around them, but I just wanted to be the guy that everybody could count on. And when I did that, when I came out of that in 2010, 2011, 12, it was very quickly. By 2013, my team had sold 187 homes that year because we learned how to work with people. I said, all right, this isn't working, so let's go try something else. Like, I quit working with the for sale by owners at that time because they just couldn't sell. Everyone was upside down 20%. Most of them didn't have money. So I just said, who has money? There's so many deals right now. Cash flows are insane. There's so many, future appreciation that's going to happen. So I just said, all right, well, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to focus on who actually has money. And I went out and I became friends with everyone in my community that was doing well. And I started selling them investment properties. And that's how I popped out of it. So just look for opportunities. Like, I wish I'd gone quicker to the bank-owned properties route. I wish I'd gone to the short sale route. I didn't adjust on those quick enough. And I never really got those going. But there's so many opportunities in different ways. Like, there's going to be, like, if the best deal that your market ever saw sold 100% of the properties, it's probably not going to get worse than 60%. So there's still going to be a ton of property. There's still going to be a ton of real estate being sold. You just got to adjust and find where those opportunities are and understand that it's going to be tougher. Don't be the naive guy that's going on your Instagram saying business as usual, because people are going to know you're out of touch. It is going to be much more difficult, but that's, there's a lot of fun in that. Like, I take more pride out of how I went through that last recession than anything I've probably ever done. Like, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but all the benefits of my career and my life came out of that as well.
So Jimmy, you do residential real estate. Do you not recommend commercial real estate? Or that's not what you're passionate about. That's not what you do when it comes to investments. Because I hear all this different pros and cons, right? One of the cons I hear about residential real estate, for example, that is when you rent it out, and if somebody is not paying their rent, it's going to take you a few months for you to be able to get rid of them. And the other thing is that if all of a sudden somebody moves, you might not be able to get another tenant there right away, so that so you might be able to go a few months not have to pay your mortgage yourself. Now, tell me your thought process. I want to dig into your brain and see what you're thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously you can do really well with both. My only thing, I kind of chose one or the other because I'm an expert on residential real estate. It's a completely different job, commercial real estate. So in 2012-13, I went and got my master's in real estate development, and I learned everything about commercial real estate as well. The one thing I learned was, like, I don't really want to do commercial real estate. You kind of got to pick one, but I do own 2 commercial real estate buildings. They were both the ones that we were working in. And so the one that we work in now, my team, and then there's another one. I will say that they're much, to me, in my community at least, they're much more difficult to rent out than residential houses are. So I've never gone more than 2-3 weeks to rent a house my whole life. I've rented 60 different properties. The commercial ones are actually more difficult to me. So if I have to get somebody out, if you're nice to people, you're a good landlord all along. Like, most people are pretty reasonable. I've only had one time out of literally, I've owned and rented over 60 investment properties. I only had one time I had to actually kick someone out, and they just were professional scammers. They knew the game. I shouldn't have done this, but I just had one of my buddies who's the scariest dude I've ever met. He went down, I told him to do this. He went down, he kicked the door off the hinges, and he took it, and he yelled, "You're welcome to stay." And he took the door, and he was a big burly dude. It was the middle of winter in Utah. They were gone in 4 hours. I scared the living shit out of them, and they left. But because they were professional scammers, she told me, "I know the system. I do this all the time. You're not getting me out for 6 months." I was like, "Want to bet?" And so, yeah, it was like I played her game of, nasty people need to be treated nasty sometimes. But otherwise, I've never had a single problem. That was like 10 years ago, but I've never had a single problem with a renter getting them to pay rent. Like, even right now, I've got one renter that she paid half, and she's a little bit late with the other half because of the coronavirus, but we'll get paid. And I always buy properties too that have a certain formula. We want the house to be 20 years or newer. I always make sure they have a little bit of a yard, a little bit of a garage. They have at least 3 bedrooms, because those properties will always get rented out. And so because of the formula we have good renters. Like, I have really good renters in all my properties. Some of them, I haven't even seen the people in 5, 6, 7 years, but every month the check shows up. This last month, I called all my renters, and I just said, "Hey, just want to let you know, I want to make sure we're good here. I'm going to give you $100 off your rent if you pay me by the 1st. I know that there's a lot of things going on, and every one of them but like 2 did that. And so I just work with them, and then you don't run into very many issues. Where people get mad or we get in trouble is if you start being a slumlord, or you start to be, too tough on people, and then they're like, "Well, screw that guy. He's rich and he's a dick," and then they don't want to work with you.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So I'm trying to get my assistants, Justin and Isaac, to get their first property, right? And so I think they got anywhere between 15 to 20 grand saved up. And they want to get an investment property. Do you work with people like that? Can you help get people like that, or do you need a few $100,000 for investors? Obviously, you prefer that. But what if somebody is just a young guy, has been working hard, got 15, 20 grand saved up? Can we work with them?
In my city, I would help you buy one, like something where you could buy owner occupied. So maybe a duplex, or something we could rent out the top and the bottom of, like a basement apartment, something where you can still qualify and put less money down. If you're buying out, outside of my city, you can't buy unless you have 20% down, which is usually about 40 or 45 grand. So depends on where you are. Yes, you definitely can help people in those situations, but personally, you probably got to have about 40 minimum to buy that first property.
But doesn't FHA only requires like 3.5%?
It's owner occupied. And so in your city, if you're buying, like, where do you live at?
We live in Orange County.
In Orange, yes. I mean, if you could find something in Orange County with that's 3.5%.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's in my city, like if somebody comes to Utah, or if somebody's in Utah and they say, hey, I want to buy a property, an investment property here in Utah, and I have 15 or 20 grand, that's perfect. Like I can find them stuff all day where they can rent enough of that to get the cash flow still, but they're going to have to live there as part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, I'd let them know, hey, let's up how much we're saving and somehow figure out how to live on less. And then let's see how long it would take you to get that extra amount that you need to put down to buy that first one. And if I lived in Orange County, I'd probably recommend they buy their first rentals somewhere else because it'd take a lot longer to.
I don't think there's money to be made in Orange County. Not very well for the prices and everything. That's why a lot of investors don't invest in California.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of our investors come from California. A lot of them.
But they don't invest in there.
No, no, they buy in our other places we're working. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yep. So Jimmy, another thing I love about what you do is you've been able to travel so much, and you've built a business kind of around what you want to do. How did you transition from working like a dog and on all this time to being able to live your life and do what you want?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So what happened was in 2005 to 2010, I'd worked so hard to keep my business afloat. I hadn't gone on a vacation in 5 years. I hadn't left the country in 7. My vacations were like a couple days, a Friday night to Sunday night kind of thing. And I just was burned out, man. And I went to my real estate coach, Bill Pipes. I said, dude, I'm done. Like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. I think I'm going to do something else because I'm just not having a good time anymore. And he said, well, what do you want your life to look like? And it's such a beautiful question. I actually ask all the people I mentor, I said, if everything went right in your life for the next 5 years, what would your life look like? And you got to get crystal clear on what that actually looks like. And so when he asked me that question, I said, honestly, like I want to be traveling the world. I want to be doing big parties with my friends. I want to be going to the most amazing events, sporting events, all these different things across the world. I want to be working with charities that I love and that I'm lit up about. I want to be spending a lot of time with my family and these. He said, let's set up our business that way then. And so we came up with this formula that basically was instead of cold calling and trying to pull people to me all day long, I said, I'm going to start attracting people to me. And so I did that a couple ways. So number one was with these client parties. Number two was with social media, being very strategic about how we post and things like that. Number three was I focused 100% on people I already knew and then on meeting new people, on networking. I started working with different charities. I started, and then one of the coolest things I did, which was kind of by accident, just because I love to travel and entertain, is I started doing a lot of these like houseboat lake trips and different things like that. I'd go on vacations with 20 to 100 people at a time. I'd do it multiple times a year. I started to create some really cool relationships. And so all of a sudden, because I had a really good team, I had a really good buyer's agent, I had a really good assistant, I could go do all these things, make these connections, and my team could actually work the back home. I learned in 2012 then I was going to Arizona State. That's where I got my master's degree. And I wasn't physically going to be in Utah. So I had to learn to do everything mobile. So I had to learn to take listings over the phone and over the internet. I had to learn how to do buyers and stuff like that. And so because I set that up then, because I was going to be gone, I really made a transfer in my business. So all these times, so like last year alone, I traveled to 27 countries. I spent 125 days on vacation. Just this year, so far this year, I've been to like 15 countries. I spent 2 weeks in Fiji. I spent a week in Costa Rica. I spent 2 weeks traveling the world. We went to 11 countries with my girlfriend. I did all these cool things. I've done all these events. And every time I'm traveling, I just have to keep working a little bit while I'm there. I have to answer those phone calls that come in, the leads. I have to set up the appointments with my team. I have to, put the text together to make sure Tyler meets with that investor and all these different things. And so I just learned to do it that way because I wanted to learn that and have that lifestyle. And to me, it was like, I don't want to do this anymore if I have to do it the old way. And I'd put the effort in to learn the skills, to have enough clients and things like that. But then when I made that shift, oh man, it was like so amazing. And so, like I just last year, I'll give you one example. I sold a house. It was the most expensive home ever sold in Utah. It's a $32.5 million house. Comes on 2,600 acres. One of my best friends in the world bought that property. He became a billionaire a couple of years ago. And him and I met 10 years ago on a houseboat trip at Lake Powell, this lake in the middle of the desert. And then he and I became really close friends. We actually became close friends in Hawaii on a trip for his birthday with like 30 of us. And so I did these trips. I remember at the time, my assistant was like, dude, you're traveling too much or going out of town too much. But then we started tracking where all the deals were coming from. I said, I just want you to see something here. And like all these deals were coming from these vacations where I was meeting everyone. He's like, I trust you, like do your thing. And so I just kind of poured the gas on it, man. And I went, I went to Panama with 40 people, went to this trip and that trip, but all these deals that we came across, I mean, that one deal alone, that one commission was more money than I made in 2008, 9, 10, and 11 combined.
How much was the commission on that, a $32 million home?
Do the math on 3% of 32.5 million. So it was a good day.
What is that? I want to know.
I made over $1 million that month. I'll just say that.
Oh man, that's amazing, man. That's pretty cool, man. I'm trying to do the math. It's like close to $1 million. Yeah, whoa.
Yeah, but that was all by design. Like I set up these, it was cool because like my friends, we were able to there's something happens when you go out of town with people. You open up, you get more vulnerable, you really share that love, and your friendship becomes much better, much deeper. And that's what was happening with us. And so because I was spending so much time investing in people, investing in relationships, the deals were just flowing in. And so instead of pulling people to me all day long, I was attracting people to me instead. And don't get me wrong, like it got to be a little excessive of the last year and a half probably. And I had to I was actually already going to pull back a little bit when this coronavirus hit. But now that I've been stuck at home for 2 months, I'm like, man, I got to get out of here and go somewhere. But
I love that. I love the fact that you understand, relationship equity. And a lot of times the relationship equity doesn't come to fruition right away. It's not like you go on a boat trip and all of a sudden that things come through. But if you nurture those relationships over time, it gets that. And that's a lot of times I feel like a lot of young people, including me when I was young, I didn't realize that. A lot of times, a deal didn't go the way it was supposed to go with a certain person, but years later, something much bigger, something much better came down, and we started doing business together.
Well, and where people get in trouble is they do it expecting something back in return, right? Like you truly have to do everything expecting nothing. Like my friends know it doesn't matter. Like we're going to be close no matter what. Like that guy, Trevor, my buddy, like he didn't buy anything for 10 years. Like I was never waiting to have a deal to have this friendship. I have so many of these examples. And where a lot of agents will be like, I did this and I did this and I wasn't getting this. And I made a mistake earlier this year. Like we opened a restaurant, me and some buddies in Vegas called Mas Por Favor. It's a new taqueria tequila restaurant.
Aaron.
And, yeah, with my buddy Aaron Wagner, a bunch of us. And our friends are super tight and we're super loyal. And we have this hashtag friends support friends. And it's just a way of like, we help each other's businesses as much as we can. And I had gone to lunch and this random friend had asked me if he could meet with those guys. He wanted to pitch his like software that was for restaurants. And I just kind of was like, he's like, cool, man. But in the same conversation, he mentioned he bought a house and didn't use me. And I was just kind of bugged. So I just kind of like, and I shouldn't have done this, but because it's not how I felt, but I just said, dude, like I sent him a text back and I was like, I'm not going to spend time with you, dude. It's friends support friends. And then I posted it and I started looking back on that. I'm like, why did I do that? Because I didn't even care that he didn't use me. We weren't close. That was my job. It was my job to be a better friend. It was my job to be in touch more. And I blasted him. And granted, there is truth to like friends should definitely support their friends, but I hadn't put the effort in with that particular guy to earn the relationship trust of him. And that's why I was bothered at myself for doing that. But the point is do everything always. That was a good reminder to myself, it's like, I need to do the work. I still need to put in those efforts for everybody. And if I don't do that, then I can't expect to get anything back. And I can't expect anything back no matter what. But I just know if I show up every day and I share enough love for enough people, just like Zig Ziglar says, if I help enough other people get what they want, I know I'm going to get what I want.
Yeah, I've learned like that's what a lot of what business is just helping people solve their problems. And when you come from a place of genuinely wanting to give and genuinely wanting to help, it comes back like tenfold. So that's that's, as a young guy myself, that's what I'm starting learning to do is cultivate these relationships and not always what can I get, but what can I give. And I think that's just something that so many people overlook.
Treat people relationally, not transactionally. That's the key. That's something I learned.
Exactly right. Like, when somebody's trying to get something from you, and it's just such an awful feeling. When somebody's trying to like maneuver something on you, I hate it. Like I'm very, I have a huge friend circle and I let a lot of people in, but I'm also like, I'm the gatekeeper of my own life. And so if I get a bad energy towards it, if I'm reading it in any other way, I'm just not going to, I don't need an excuse. You're not going to hear from me,
Yeah. My biggest question to you is, you went through a downturn in 2008, the same, like I was telling, Justin all the time, I got PTSD from that. I remember getting my houses getting foreclosure notices and, this time around, I'm prepared like you are. This time around, man, I don't want to ever put my family and myself in that position again. How does 2008 compare to what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19? And what do you predict? I know you can't predict everything, but if in your thought, how do you see a real estate market going? From here on, because I live in a pretty nice community here, and I remember some of the homes that were selling for $3-4 million, now are going for about 300,000, 400,000 less than what they were listing about a couple of months ago. And usually they say that the luxury market gets hurt first, and then it kind of trickles down. Do you see that happening? Do you see an adjustment coming on in real estate?
Yeah, so I think you said it pretty well. I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of smart people trying to, get everybody's opinion on this. And the people that seem to be the most plugged into what's going to happen, they have a similar opinion, which is, and again, it all depends on how long this stretches out. In a lot of parts of the country, it looks like people are going to get back to work. Like, I'm personally of the crowd that thinks that we need to all go back to work. It's my personal opinion. Like, the numbers speak for themselves. I have worked with a lot of people in to help rescue people in sex trafficking and things like that. I know what happens when poverty strikes. I know how many children get hurt. I know how the abuse happens in trafficking and all this. So I'm very much of the ilk of, like, we need to get back to work. You got a lot of people, it seems like they're almost cheering for the economy to drop or to not have to go to work. And a lot of people, if you include their stimulus check plus what they're getting from unemployment right now, they're making the same as if they were working. So a lot of people are kind of pushing this agenda to not have to go back to work. But if this goes through, if we're still quarantined into June, I think it gets ugly for everybody eventually. It just has to. So much money being lost, so much economy being destroyed. If we can get back to work sometime in May, I don't know. I do think the top end is going to get hurt the most. You're going to see these, but I don't think, like, it depends on the area. Like, I think it'll be much more individual this time than it was last time. Last time, everything across the board was coming down. What happened was it was lending. Like, everything, real estate actually caused the last recession, and it caused the issues getting it back going. Real estate didn't cause any of this time. And so essentially, most people with investment properties are going to hang on to them. You're going to be able to at least cash flow enough from those properties because they put money down, because they have better interest rates. And so people will be able to hang on to those. I don't have any investors looking to just fire sell any properties. What'll happen is you get a lot of people that realize they probably were living above their means. I think what this has done is exposed a lot of what's wrong with our lives, along with what's wrong with America. And so I think as people get clarity on that, they're going to go, okay, I don't need the $900,000 house. Let's move into the $450,000 house, right? And but if enough people are doing that, you see that high end, you can't sell that $900,000 home for $900. It's now going for $775, and so you'll see a lot of that. I do think that'll happen. I think there'll be, especially in the luxury market, those multi-million-dollar homes. I think you're going to see a lot of deals pop up. A buddy of mine just bought, not in Utah, unfortunately, so I couldn't represent it, but he just bought a property that had been for sale that he'd had his eye on for a couple of years for it was $22 million property, and he offered the guy 12 and a half, and he took it.
Wow.
So there's going to be deals like that are happening. There's only so many people are going to spend 12.5 million bucks right now, right? And that guy's probably thinking, well, I could put this 12.5 million into the stock market as soon as it gets back to where it was. I've got my 22 million. So he's probably like looking at that way. And so there's these deals like that I think will pop up. I do think the high end will come down 25, 30%. As of right now, I don't think the lower end properties, the ones that are cash flowing, the rentals, I don't think they're going to have any issues. But if it keeps going long enough, man, we could all, end up being in a tough situation. So I don't know. I just hope we can get back to work sooner than later.
What advice would you have for first-time home buyers?
All right, first-time home buyers, the easiest thing in the world. Cody Sperber, the clever investor, good friend of mine, says the exact same thing. Buy something that has two parts to it, okay? Either an up and down apartment or a duplex or whatever that is. Live in the one half, rent out the other half. Make sure that your payment it'll probably cover 70, 75%, if not the whole damn thing. And then you live for basically nothing. Put all the savings either towards that mortgage or into an account to buy your next property. And as soon as you have enough money, then go buy your condo or your another duplex or a townhome and just keep doing that, move into them. And then once, you got money for the next one, buy the next one. But make sure they're very cash flow positive, be very conservative. If your first 10 years of living, you can live in a boring place, then you're going to have an amazing real estate portfolio. The mistake most people make is they just want a big, nice house. And like, if you're working hard, if you're hustling your first 10 years in your 20s, you're never there anyway. So who gives a shit?
Exactly. You want a big, nice house when you're in your 30s and 40s. You're not when you're in your 20s. You're going to be working and hustling anyway. It goes back to, if you want to live like no other, you got to live like no other first. Delay gratification and all that. And you know what, Cody, I love that guy, man. We got to get him on the podcast.
We're working on it. I've been talking to his assistant
but hey,
for a
man,
while.
come on, get Cody on the podcast. Bro.
Yeah, he's coming. But yeah, I love that. I love that.
He got a green performante, man. I was checking him out, man. I was stalking him on Instagram. I was stalking you today on Instagram too.
Yeah. One thing I was reading up on you, and you mentioned it right now, is you've gone undercover for child sex trafficking. I've never seen anybody in that.
Way.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit how you got into that and just how you're so passionate about it?
Yeah. So in Utah, there's a guy by the name of Tim Ballard. He started this organization called Operation Underground Railroad. And long story short, that was about 5 years ago. I heard about it when it was about 6 months old. And I went to a networking meeting, and another one of his main guys spoke about it. And I just wanted to be a part of it. And so I'm very good at, providing value if I really am passionate about something. So I just went out of my way to do all that I could to be a part of this, going to their fundraisers, helping raise money, training to go undercover with some fight to kill type training, all these different things. And thankfully they allowed me to come on some missions. I ended up going on like 11 missions. This is, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but this is the guy here. His name is Tim Ballard. This was from some of the money we used to rescue some girls from one of our ops in Mexico. And anyway, his organization now is one of the it's a huge organization. They partner with Glenn Beck and Tony Robbins, and they've helped rescue thousands of girls from sex trafficking. It's called Operation Underground Railroad. I never like worked for them. I just got to go on these ops as kind of an operator. I was part of a group that got to do that. But yeah, and so I'm very passionate about it. It's something that changed my life forever and opened up my eyes to what's out there, what's going on. And so it's been really special to be a part of it. I was just at Tony Robbins' birthday party in February, and they hosted it for OUR for this group, and they raised, I think, like $25 million just in one night. Like, it's a great cause. So I don't know. It's something I was lucky enough to be a part of during the time that we were doing ops. And so it's something I love to share about, and something that forever changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. And I've seen a couple videos from footage of undercover operations, but
I have seen them too.
Yeah,
I've got a couple of them on my phone. When we have, when we knew the federales or whatever country we were in were going to be busting in, I would pull out my phone and pretend I was just recording. So I've got a couple of videos I've never been able to share, obviously, but that some of these takedowns. And I mean, we were in some pretty sketchy situations, in different countries and stuff, but thankfully no one ever got hurt. They ran a very good operation. It was a very controlled environment. But yeah, we would go into some of these darkest areas of these cities and find the bad guys. I mean, find the dudes that were trafficking, and then we would set up the sting operation with the local governments and stuff like that. And it's been really cool. The rescues, Tim has literally been able to rescue thousands of girls. We've been able to arrest hundreds of traffickers. I've personally been involved with over 100 rescues and over 40 arrests. And we know that each one of those traffickers was probably going to traffic in his life 70 to 80 girls. And so, yeah, it's a big problem. There's over 2 million kids being trafficked all the time in the world right now. You wouldn't know it. Cities that I'd been to multiple times and didn't even cross my mind that would be a thing. And within 45 minutes, we were able to find traffickers that were providing that. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of part of the cool part of living the way I have been, right? Like, I set myself up so that when the opportunity presented itself, I donated a large chunk of money. I used my entire network. We always pay our own way for all these ops. They're very expensive. We have to bribe a lot of people. Because of real estate, because of the way I'd set up my business and my life, I was able to go do these things. Like, when I was going through, this is probably a good thing to share. Like, when I was going through the junk, when I was going through the mess of the market, one of the things I had written on my wall, and I just had this weird feeling. I was like, Jimmy, because there was no reward day to day. Like, you're making calls all day and nothing's happening, sometimes for weeks at a time. It was very hard to keep motivated. And so I would say to myself, I had it written on my wall, I said, show up today for your future self. You don't know who needs you. You don't know what opportunities are going to come. But like, I look back now, And like, I have so much love for me in that time. It was really hard to keep selling. And, but I showed up for my future self. I showed up for people I'd never met, for those kids. And, you know, I get emotional talking about it because it was so hard. And I had to find motivation from everywhere I could, but I didn't quit in that time. And because of that, I've been able to do some really beautiful things with my life, and it means a lot to me. So, you know, show up today for your future self. That's what I tell people.
I love that, man. I love that. Show up today for your future self. I mean, gosh, that's a bomb right there. You know, and you know, we appreciate people like you who goes out there, you know, are able to do something for themselves, but more importantly, turn around and give back to the world, which is so noble. This it's all about fulfillment at this point. You have everything that you want out of life. You know, you're set up. Now it's all about something that makes your heart happy, some contribution that you do into the world, and I want to thank you for that. You know, now Jimmy, for people who want to learn more about you or invest with you, you know, where can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest place to get a hold of me is on my Instagram. I always respond to those messages. So Mr. Jimmy Rex, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Very quickly get back to people on Instagram. That's where I do about 40% of my real estate deals as well. So Mr. Jimmy Rex, just send me a message, and we just like, that's how you got a hold of me, and how we got a hold of each other. And, you know, it's a very easy way for me to get back to you, and we'll set up a call or whatever it is. So.
Well, brother, I appreciate you, man. And, you know, I want to exchange numbers, you know, after this. You know, because I want to, pick your brain and maybe possibly investing with you.
Absolutely, man. Would love to. So we'll stay in touch, of course. So this was a pleasure. Thank you so much, man.
Hey guys, if you like today's episode, do me a huge favor. Go ahead and leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, leave me a review, and tag a few friends that you think can benefit from what we shared today. Really appreciate it. God bless.